Yep.
So it's still earlier for Amber, I guess. She must be very early for her.
Yeah, it's 5 a.m. here.
5 a.m.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Where are you?
Hawaii.
In Hawaii. Oh.
So you can't complain. Can't complain here.
Exactly. You can complain in the short term, sure, but in the long term, Hawaii is a pretty nice place to be.
So you had some beeper issues. Let's start with those. So that turns out to be a fairly frequent problem with the beeper. I thought I had sent you a beeper where that was not a problem, but the plastic apparently has outgas that holds the earphone jack.
Okay.
And so let me answer your second question first about pushing the button. You can push the button whenever you want to push the button, and
Okay.
that does not reset it. Pushing the button down stops the process for a while you hold it down. So if you hold the button down for 30 seconds, you've just made the interval 30 seconds longer.
Okay.
But so you can always press the button, and that's what the button is designed to do. So press the button, and you can tell whether the earphone is working and whether the jack is working.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay.
Then, as far as the jack itself, what I would recommend is if you can find a place where find a way that the jack operates, and then use Scotch tape or something and Scotch tape the plug in that position.
Yep.
And by testing it out by holding the white button down, and if that does it, then let's limp along with that. And I'm going to have to.
Sure.
Be a more difficult problem than one might imagine.
I don't think the issue has prevented me from hearing any beeps, but I just thought I'd mention it. And I'll do that. I'll just sort of fix it in there with a bit of tape or something.
Right. And then there's the more broader issue of whether we should make these things public or not. And I think that's an important question, and I don't want to short circuit that. One of the protections, I guess you could say, that's built into this process is that we don't have to make that decision today. I'm not asking for informed consent on the first day or whatever for everything after that. So I would say we should go forwards and make a determination when we have all the information at hand. And at that time, you should feel free to say, well, we tried it. I don't think it's a good idea. You should consult with whomever you want to consult with about advantages and risks.
Yeah.
I've tried to be forthcoming about what's in it for me.
Yep.
And, what's in it, what I think is in it for science. And
yep. I really appreciate your openness and your informativeness. So I still do have to think about it quite carefully because it is a big decision, and I don't want to say I'm leaning one way or the other way right now, but I'll let you know as soon as I have an answer.
Right. Well, I think that's fair, and I don't want to rush you into it one way or the other. I don't want to pressure you into it one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's the being public about it is a risk for all concerned, including me and the rest of us on the screen. And it opens the process for everybody to look at, and so people can say, well, Russ, you've been saying this for however many years, but that isn't really what you do. Now that I get a chance to see it, I can pick you apart as well. Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of the process, and but that's I think everybody should have the free person right to decide whether they want to be a part of that or not.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So if it's all right with you, then what I would say is we should proceed in the way that we have, which is to say we're proceeding as on the possibility that maybe we'll make these things public. And if that doesn't come to pass, you shouldn't feel bad about that. And that is the price of admission for us, I guess, that we're we're willing to take this step down the road and see where the road leads. And if the road doesn't lead to someplace that means putting it public, then we won't make it public.
Yep. It's only the second time, so let's
right.
let's see where this goes. I'm quite excited.
So, anything else that we should be talking about before we look at beeps?
Well, okay. I think as I practice a little more, and I'm not such a beginner, I guess you could say. I do have an initial thought, and I'm sort of noticing a pattern, and that is when the beep goes off, and I try to recall my inner experience at the moment just prior to the beep, I'm starting to feel like on a few occasions there's sort of a multiplicity of events that I'm apprehending, and I don't necessarily know, I'm not entirely confident if I'm experiencing or apprehending these events simultaneously, or if it's one, or if there is some kind of sequence to them, but they're so close in time and everything seems to happen so quickly that I can't put them in a proper order. But we can discuss this as I go through the individual beeps, or if you want to comment right now, we can discuss it now if you want. But it's just this multiplicity, and then the beep goes off, and I'm like, okay, I feel like there were a bunch of things going on at the moment right before the beep, and I'm not quite sure if they were simultaneous or if there is an order to them. It's very difficult, and it seemed like it was all happening very quickly.
Well, let me make one general comment, and then I guess maybe the overarching general comment is I think these questions are best answered by looking at individual beeps. Okay. So we should keep this question alive as we talk about the beeps. And then the other general thing that I would say is there's no rule that says that inner experience should be of one thing, or it should be of multiple simultaneous things, or it should be of things that are rapidly occurring and we can't sort out the order. I don't have a favorite kind of inner experience. The object is to be as faithful to your experience as it is, and then we'll see.
Okay.
So does that answer enough of your question so that we can look at individual?
Yeah. So
can I add one thing as well, actually, to that? I would say, too, that I think that's why we do this over multiple rounds, right? In that it sounds pretty trivially easy, right, to apprehend whatever's ongoing, but when you really start going through it, there's stuff that happens and that's predicated on whether we do this or not, right, on future days, but that's not an uncommon sort of reaction as well to that. So it's not a failure of your part, Phil, or of our part or anything like that. This is kind of how the process is.
Yeah. It's funny. Like, I feel like I'm getting more practice at it. I feel like I'm improving, but I also feel like I'm discovering how difficult it actually is.
Well, that's an important discovery, and that is part of the deal. And the question is whether it's just getting more difficult or whether it's impossible. And that's a big distinction, but one that I don't think can be answered in the abstract. So I think we have to go beep by beep by beep by beep and see what the deal is there.
Okay, so I'm just going to proceed as I did last time with I'm just going to read my note for each beep. Okay, so beep number 1. I was sort of innerly rehearsing what I was about to say. Evestina, my partner, my fiance, she had been telling me that she was going to bring her passport on a trip to Sweden to a conference that she was leaving for, and at the time it was a few hours before she left. And I recalled the time her mom who is normally a very, very organized, meticulous person, had called Evastina about misplacing her own passport. And I had been innerly saying to myself with words something like, I remember when your mom thought you had her passport. And I wanted to share the memory with Evastina, but I was a bit hesitant because there was no reason to say anything that could seem a bit negative about her mom. So I just said it in my head with words, I can't believe your mom misplaced her passport, instead of saying it out loud, to sort of help me decide if I wanted to actually say it out loud or not. It was kind of like just putting it on the table as a thought to actually vocalize or not, just to see how it might feel if I did vocalize it, and to be better able to expect what Evastina might say. Or alternatively, just forget about it and get back to what I was doing, which was just I was walking through the entranceway of our place to get to our patio.
Okay. So there were a couple of things about that I didn't understand, maybe because of glitches in the audio or whatever. So it seemed like there were two things that you were saying. One is, I remember when your mom had your passport.
Yeah, that was a little bit earlier. That wasn't immediately before the beep, but that's just sort of setting up the context.
Okay, that's context. And then at the moment of the beep is, I can't believe your mom, and then I lost the word there.
Okay, I can't believe your mom misplaced her passport.
Okay, and that's a quote, a word for word quote, the entire sentence. What you said to yourself, is that right?
Yeah.
And you said that was in inner speech. And were there any characteristics of this? What's this experience about?
Can you be more specific?
Well, like, were there inflections? I can't believe your mom lost her passport or misplaced it.
Yeah, just as if I was saying it out loud. Like, I can't believe. What did I can't believe your mom misplaced her passport.
So that saying has a sort of a definitiveness to it, or a power to it.
Yeah.
More so than, well, I can't believe that your mom misplaced her passport. So is that correct, that your inner speaking had that
intonation
or puissance, or whatever we want to call it?
Yeah,
okay.
It did.
And
because her mom is normally very, very organized, so it's quite surprising that. So this was a while back, and her mom had thought that Evastina might have accidentally packed her passport in something of Evastina's when we went to visit them, and that Evastina had brought it from Sweden back here to Norway, and that she still had it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And is there anything else to say about the speaking itself? You seem very confident that this was part of the experience at the moment of the beep. Is that true?
Yeah, I'm quite confident. I was just kind of saying it in my head instead of saying it out loud, because I thought, I don't know, I just wanted to see how it would feel to just say it, and then it was going to be either I do say that out loud or just forget about it.
Okay. And so I understand that context and the motivation and all, but I would like to know whether that is part of your experience at the moment of the beep. Like, I'm evaluating this as to whether I should say it. Is that in my direct experience, or is that's the context? I've set this up for myself and now I'm doing it.
I would say that was part of my experience. And
in any way that, in what way is that part of your?
How did I apprehend that? I don't know. I was just, it's hard to describe. It was more like a feeling of like, I'm just going to put this on, I'm just going to say it in my head to see, or I didn't think that, but I was just saying it in my head to see if I wanted to say it out loud or not.
So the question that I'm asking, and it might very well be impossible to nail down, is, are you directly apprehending yourself as evaluating this, or have you set yourself an evaluation task and that's in motion, and now I'm just saying it out loud, and sooner or later?
Yeah, the latter. I had set it in motion, and I was just.
So at the moment of the beep, this is more, I'm just saying this. And then later on, I'm going to come back and evaluate and see whether I should go with it or not.
Yeah.
Okay. And
well, I said it, I thought it with words in my head with the purpose of later deciding, like with the intention of deciding whether or not I would say it out loud.
right, I understand that. But what I understand you to be saying is, I have set myself in motion, so to speak, to say this out loud with the intention of deciding later. But now at the moment, I'm just saying it. And then later on, I'm going to decide how that sounds. As opposed to keeping in mind directly, I've got a piece of myself that's monitoring myself explicitly in my consciousness. But that might very well be a distinction that just is not possible to make.
Can you repeat that once more?
So I could decide to get a cup of tea, and now I just pick up the cup of tea, and when I'm getting the cup of tea, the decision to get it is gone. I have set myself the task of getting it, and now I've got it. But when I've got it, I'm not. There's no decision left to take a sip. I'm just in the action of doing that.
Right.
So the question is whether the evaluative component is present to you at the moment of this beep.
I would say no.
Okay.
Yeah. I had thought to myself, oh, sorry, I'm just going to let the cat in because she's distracted. Yeah, I was just thinking about this time that her mom called, and then I didn't know if I wanted to say anything out loud or not about it to Evestina, or just keep my thoughts to myself. And then the moment prior to the beep, I was saying to myself, I can't believe your mom thought, what was it again?
I misplaced the passport.
I can't believe your mom misplaced her passport. And I knew as I was saying that afterwards I would evaluate it as something I was going to say out loud or not. I think that's as best as I can put it.
Right, that's fair. And I think it is the case with inner experience in general that there is often, as here, probably not a perfectly clear dividing line between what is exactly an experience and what is not. We call that in the weeds. There's a part of experience that's in the weeds, and you really can't say whether it's there, whether it's not there. And I think this is probably one of those things where the intention might be there, might color the way you said it or whatever, but it's not possible to tease it apart.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the intention was there.
Right. The question is whether it was there experientially or whether it was there.
Oh, right. Yeah. I'm not sure.
It's sort of like the wind up in a pitch, you know. I'm not planning on doing the wind up. I'm planning on making the pitch, but I'm winding up to do it. I mean, that's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anything else in your experience at this beep?
Nope. I think that's as best as I can describe that one.
All right. Well, shall we let Cody ask some questions here about this next beep?
Sure, that sounds good to me. All right, Phil, what was in your experience at the moment of beep 2?
Okay. I was spending the day with Agustina because it was a weekend and she was going away, and we were we were outside and we were having lunch, and we were talking about our new car. And with the previous cars, they had names, so we're kind of guilty of anthropomorphizing that way. But we were talking about what to name the new car, and I suggested the name Bili, pronounced that way because car is bil in Norwegian. And at the moment prior to the beep, I was saying that word out loud. And while I was saying it, I was innerly visualizing the letters of the word Billie in tall italicized black letters that looked similar to maybe a newspaper headline on a white background. And the letters were in what could be a font that exists, but I have no idea of the name of it or where I might have seen it. Or it could just be a font that my brain conjured up. But somehow it seemed appropriate for the car's new name, Billie.
And just so I make it clear, you're saying Billie, B-I-L-L-I-E, that's the word for the...
Yeah, I guess it would be spelled B-I-L-L-I-E, but pronounced Billie.
Billie,
Like,
okay.
Like as if it had two B's, or two E's after the B instead of an I.
Gotcha, okay. And this italicized Billie, the word, is there a location to that where you're seeing it? Like, is this, I'm seeing it in front of me? Is there a...
Yep. It was just in front of me. I wasn't paying any attention to the information that was actually coming into my eye. I wasn't paying attention to my immediate environment. I was purely visualizing the word Billie in these letters on a white background. And it was, I guess, well, now that you ask me if it had a are you asking me if it had a location in my actual environment?
That could be the case, or whether the location has any sort of saliency to this. Like, so am I seeing, again, is this sort of just I'm seeing this and there really is no location, it's just something that's in my mind, or I'm seeing it particularly projected on somewhere, something in my environment, or that's somewhere, whether location is relevant or not, I guess is my question, is does this have a location?
I don't think location is relevant. I mean, obviously it must have a location if I'm visualizing it. And relative to me, that location would be just as if I'm like looking at a newspaper headline, I guess.
So let me ask maybe a simpler version of the same question. Does it seem like this Billie that you see is out in front of you, or does it seem like it's in your head? Obviously, you're making it up, so the neurons are in your head. But is the experience as if you're seeing it in front of you?
It was as if it was in front of me. Yes.
So not in a particular location, like on that table or on that chair or whatever, but out in front of you somewhere.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And is it big? I mean, again, I don't want to be, but I'm not asking about the font here, the size specifically, but, is this like small words, big words, big letters?
It was pretty big, but I couldn't give you, I can't give you an actual estimate of how big it was, but if you're, let's say, a few feet away from a newspaper and it's a big headline, it would be kind of similar. Maybe less than a few feet.
And and you said there was a white, these are black letters, black italicized letters on a white background.
Yes.
Are you seeing a background here too? Or, is this like, in other words, again, is this as if, are you seeing a white background, or is this, I'm seeing black letters and it's as if it was on, printed on a newspaper, and obviously in the real world that newspaper would be on a white piece of paper or an off-white piece of paper?
I would say there was a white background. Yeah. It's not as if it was just kind of blank or just like nothingness, the ether. It was quite similar as if you were looking at an actual newspaper or something printed on a white sheet of paper. Yeah.
Okay. It's more than just seeing the black letters, and then there's something about seeing like
or on a computer screen, for example. Yeah.
And is there anything else in your experience here at the moment of the beep aside from the seeing Beely?
I would say no. I wonder though if I was picturing the word because of the difference between the pronunciation and my imaginary spelling of it.
Could very well be, but
because I was comparing it to the name Billy, right? But it's not Billy, it's Beely. So maybe that's why I was visualizing the word, the written word at the time.
And I think what we find often is that, inner experiences defies explanation. I mean, there's a lot of things we probably would assume we would be an experience, but it's not. And that's kind of the beautiful thing about it, right? Is that there's no logic to it or rules that it has to follow.
Yeah.
So I understand this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Robert.
So you said at the moment of the beep, you were saying Beely out loud. Is that is that in your experience, or is that just part of the background?
Well, I guess if it was part of my experience, I would have been paying attention to hearing myself saying it, perhaps, or trying to pronounce it.
So I don't think that's necessarily true. But what I heard you to say is I'm seeing Beely printed, and I'm not experiencing the rest of the world that my eyes are looking at. My eyes are looking at presumably Agostino or the table or the landscape or whatever, but I'm not experiencing that. I'm processing it clearly. My visual experience is doing whatever, or my visual processing apparatus, whatever that is doing its job, but I'm not experiencing that.
Correct.
So my question is about the same thing about the saying of Beely. You're saying that, your neurons are processing that. But that,
I don't think I was experiencing anything to do with the fact that I was actually saying the word Beely.
So your experience, as far as you experience it, is entirely this inner visualization of the word.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So we done with this particular beep?
And that was going to be my wrap up, was to make sure I got it, but that was my understanding as well, Phil, what was going on.
So far, returning to this discussion we had at the beginning, I haven't heard anything that sounds like this multiple simultaneous or sequential thing. Is that
okay. So that has to do with the next beep, which I didn't actually count because I don't know. We were talking about our duvets. We were putting the duvets into the duvet covers. And right before the beep, I was imagining, so I did write this down. I was imagining just having gotten into bed, focusing on it being a bit cold, but very comfortable. But I felt like there was something more specific that I had forgotten. Like there was some other part of the experience, or maybe imagining getting into bed and like what I just described took place a little bit before the moment, right before the beep. So I felt like maybe there was something to do with like the motion of getting under the covers, or my personal configuration that I was imagining myself in, or some other kind of realization. But I'll tell you exactly what I wrote. I felt like I blanked on this in the same way as being interrupted and forgetting what I was about to say. So I sort of felt like the beep kind of interrupted me.
Okay.
Yeah, like there was something right before the beep, but it had gone off. It had sort of startled me a little bit, and then I couldn't remember what was right before the beep.
And that feeling of interruption or I've lost it is enough so that you didn't count that as a beep. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
And
I
so,
feel like imagining getting into bed was sort of the moment before the beep somehow.
okay.
Yeah. So I remember saying to Agustina, I don't know, I feel like there was something, but I can't remember it right now. I'm just blanking on what it was exactly. And I said, I think I'm not going to count this one. I don't know if that information is valuable to you, but
Well, I don't think we know exactly what's valuable. What I would say is part of the reason that we do this multiple times is that if we have this kind of experience frequently, if this is a one-off deal, then we can say, well, there was something about this situation. But if we were to go forward and sample a few more times and have 2 or 3 or 4 more beeps where there seemed to be something just beyond, then we would have to try to figure out what that's about, because that would seem to be an important sort of constitutive feature of Phil's engagement in this task, whether it's his experience that way or whether the task is that way or the indecision about whether the beeper's working or all that stuff, the war in Ukraine, who knows what might enter into this.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I thought it would be best just to move on to the next beep.
Okay, that would be fine. And Amber, would you like to ask the questions, or shall we just? Amber's really new at this, so it's putting her a little bit on the spot. So,
if I have questions, I'll chime in.
Okay.
But a lot of the questions I was thinking of, someone had already asked them. So.
I think it's fair. I just don't want you to feel slighted.
Okay, thank you.
Number 3.
Okay. I was talking to myself out loud. I wanted to clean a wooden bench on our patio, and we don't have any. If I say Jaekl, do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know what a Jaekl is.
They're these little cloth sort of rags that you can buy to clean things with.
Okay.
Yeah. We normally buy them, and we didn't have any. So I was thinking of just using a rag, and I was going to a closet to get one, and I was saying, I'll use a rag, I suppose. At the same time, I was picturing one of the few rags I was pretty sure we have, which was a black sock. I was picturing it in the closet where I thought it was, on a shelf unit on the left side on the upper shelf. And what I thought was kind of strange is that I was saying this to myself, although I had already decided what I was going to do. I had decided that I was going to go see if this rag was there and go nab it, but for some reason I was still saying out loud, after making that decision, I'll use a rag, I suppose.
Okay.
So it was sort of the same as the experience with the car name. I was saying something out loud, and I was visualizing something at the same time. But in this case, I was visualizing something that actually exists.
Okay. And is in the present beep, in the car rag beep, is the visualization the predominant portion of your experience?
Did you say car rag?
The rag, bench rag, the sock.
The thing, yeah.
The sock.
Okay. Yeah. You're asking me if the visualizing was sorry, the audio was out a little bit. You're asking me if the visual aspect was a predominant aspect.
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it was both me saying that out loud, or experiencing myself saying that out loud, and the visualizing.
Sort of 50-50-ish?
Yeah, I think so.
So that makes this different from the Beeley example, which I understood to be almost entirely the individualization, and the words were being set up.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about the words.
Can I just say something first?
Yeah.
So this was a bit of a different context because I was alone. So that time I was talking to Evestina, and I was saying a lot, like we were having a conversation. So talking was a thing that I was doing. Whereas at this point it was, I don't know, I might have been playing some music, but it was quiet, and I had been alone for an hour or two, and I said this out loud. So it sort of stood out a bit more.
Okay. So does it? Let me start at the beginning here. So you're
Sure.
saying out loud, "I'll use a rag, I suppose."
Yeah.
And does that have a particular inflection that you can?
It was very similar to how I would have just kind of thinking, like you I'm sure you know the phrase "thinking out loud." I said it like, "I'll use a rag, I suppose."
Okay.
I'll use a rag, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I experience myself as saying that.
Yeah, I did, because I was speaking to myself. So.
And does it make sense to say whether this saying is the experience of speaking or the experience of hearing or both? Or And sometimes we use the distinction of like a tape recorder. If you can speak into the tape recorder and then you can play it back, those would be the same words, your voice, but a quite different experience. Speaking in is quite different for most people, quite different from the hearing it.
I would say the hearing aspect was I would say the hearing aspect might have been, I'm not so confident in this, but the hearing aspect might have been a bit more prominent than the speaking aspect.
So it would be more fair to say, according to this draft, I hear myself saying rather than I'm saying.
Correct. Yeah.
But you don't sound too sure about that. That's a difficult thing. Sometimes a difficult thing.
I would say I'm like 75% sure of that. I mean, it makes sense to me because I was alone and it was relatively quiet. So
so I would like us to set aside what makes sense.
Sorry, can I interrupt? I'm thinking of it in terms of, okay, you can say something and not hear it. Like if the sound is somehow eliminated as you say something, but you're still you're still articulating your mouth and you're still making all the same motion that you would as if when you are saying something out loud, but you just hear absolutely nothing. Or is it like I'm completely silent and, as you said, listening to a tape recorder? So between those two, I would say that the experience of hearing myself was more apparent than the experience of like vocalizing the word.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does it seem like that's like when you're talking to us right now, is that the same way that when you're talking to us that you experience yourself as hearing it as much as or more than saying it?
I think when I'm talking to you now, I'm doing a lot more planning of what I'm going to say, and I'm trying to be clear so that you can, because there is a bit of trouble with the audio sometimes. So I'm putting more effort into articulating what I'm saying.
Okay. So the words are coming out while I'm walking to get the rag.
Yep.
I'll use a rag, I suppose. And these words are meaningless in the sense that you already decided to get the rag.
Yes.
But so they're like a commentary in some way, like just a commentary of.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like doing my own play-by-play or something.
Right. Okay. Anything else to say about that experience? Anybody?
I had one question.
Go for it.
Or Amber, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, you mentioned also visualizing a black sock rag in the closet where you
Yep.
had thought that it was. Do you
Yep.
have, so in that visualization, do you have anything more to say about that?
I guess I was remembering where it was, and remembering the image of the last time that I saw it there. It was as though I was sort of looking at a picture of it, because I wasn't entirely confident if it was there or if it even existed, but I was pretty sure there was a black sock or two up at the top of the shelf on the left side. There's a lot of stuff up there, so.
And do you see this clearly? Is this
Yeah, I saw it. I saw it clearly. Yes.
in the same sense of seeing clearly as seeing the letters Beely?
No, now that you mention it, it is a bit more vague because I wasn't entirely sure of the other thing. So as I was saying, there's a lot of stuff up there. And to be honest, I wasn't so sure of what was next to it or on top of it or, yeah. So I was, the surroundings of the black sock were kind of vague, but the black sock and the actual shelf and and the rest was pretty clear, but otherwise it was kind of vague. I still don't know what was beside it or below it or whatever. I just kind of went there and so that was my inner experience, and then afterwards the beep went off, and then I actually went there and I just kind of nabbed the sock, and I was like, oh yeah, of course, it's there.
So at the moment of this beep, what I understand you to be saying about the visual aspect is I see the black sock and the shelf clearly, and then what's surrounding that is sort of indeterminately seen. It's not seen and it's not seen. It's somewhere in the middle of that. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so is the sock seen as clearly as the letters Beely, or more clearly, or different?
I would say a little bit less clearly because I wasn't imagining the exact configuration of the sock that was sitting there.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Generic black sock, generic sense of black sock experienced visually.
Okay.
And this seeing is, I know the sock is black, but would you consider it to be the visualization, the entire image per se is black and white, in color?
In color, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, the shelf is brown. I think there was a box up there, even though I said I wasn't sure of what's next to it, but I know there's a box somewhere up there that's also sort of brown and yeah.
Okay.
All right. Then I'm good. Number 4, you want to do code 4 and Cody?
I had one question though about the last beep here. I'll use a rag, I suppose. Phil, did the beep interrupt that at any point? Like, had you just said it was this, was this right after you had said that, in the middle of rag, or anywhere? Just the timing of the beep, I was curious about.
I think, as best I can remember, I was in the middle of suppose.
Okay.
I'll use a rag. I said beep.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Then I'm good on beep 3, and I think everyone else is, correct?
Yep.
Okay. All right. On to the next beep.
Okay. I was still cleaning the patio. I noticed a weed, growing between some patio stones, and I was irritated by its presence. While looking at it and bending down to remove it, I had innerly said to myself with words, "This stupid plant," and quickly grabbed it and picked off some of its leaves. And as I did this with my hand, I apprehended so I don't want to complicate things with this. So I apprehended a slight vague resemblance in the shape of the plant to some kind of large insect or creature, almost like something from a horror film. Not that I mistook the plant for this thing, and I didn't find it frightening. And I wrote that perhaps this was the influence of having watched Stranger Things recently. I don't know if I guess maybe we're familiar with Stranger Things.
I can imagine, but I don't know.
So I think I may have misheard the word, Phil, so I wanted to make sure I understood this. When you said this resemblance to like an insect, is that what do you mean by that exactly? How is that directly in your experience?
It was just as I was, okay, yeah, I'll try to describe it a little more carefully. So I noticed the plant, and I was saying out loud, "This stupid plant," and I reached out for it, and I grabbed it to sort of pluck the leaves away. And as I was reaching it, all of a sudden, it's sort of, it's really hard to describe. I noticed that it resembled sort of an insect or some kind of creature that was kind of nasty, but I didn't stop reaching towards. I knew that, of course, it's just a weed between the patio stones, but I had some instant, fleeting apprehension of an insect or some kind of creature.
And is that noticing, is this like and I want to throw out a bunch of possibilities here. It could be neither, it could be, one of these could be neither of these things, but was that like is it sort of like a cognitive sort of recognition of, again, there's some sort of evaluative component of knowing this? Is this a visual sort of a thing of, obviously in the real world, you're looking at a weed, but like it's almost as if I'm seeing this insect thing, or I'm feeling the texture or something.
It was like there was some sort of cognitive process of that going on below the surface, but what I had access to was just, all of a sudden it looked sort of like, visually, it appeared sort of like an insect for a brief moment in time before I plucked the greater part of it out.
So I'm looking at this weed and I'm noticing it looks like an insect, or again some kind of a bug insect thing like that. But
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
you
I want
towards something more specific, but I don't know if I can give it to you.
And no, that's fine. We want to get you to the sort of the edge of certainty.
To what the experience was.
Right, yeah. And so is this as if I'm seeing an insect plant? Again, I know in reality it wasn't an insect plant, but is that sort of what my experience feels like? Is I'm seeing I'm seeing an insect.
Necessarily like, well, it's either an insect or a plant. So it was. I knew it was a plant, but it appeared like it was some kind of insect or creature or something that doesn't actually exist.
And it looks like that. This is a seeing experience.
This was a seeing experience,
not a cognitive analytic experience.
Yeah, but it had it did have a slight disturbing aspect to it. Like if I had given it more attention, I might have gone, ugh, like, oh, nasty, for lack of a better way to put it. I'm trying my best.
And so at the moment of this beep, are you seeing an insecty thing as far as your experience is concerned? I'm seeing.
Well, this is sort of what I'm talking about. I mean, there was me thinking with innerly speaking with words. This stupid plant, and me reaching out to it and plucking the greater part of it and apprehending this insect-like quality to it. And it's quite difficult to put a sequence in those different aspects, or decide whether or not it was all simultaneous.
So the beep comes somewhere in there, and maybe they're all at the same time, and maybe they're one after another. But we can't.
I wouldn't say the beep came somewhere in there, but well, maybe it did, or just after. I think it was just after.
So maybe I considered giving this mini lecture in the context of the previous beep, and maybe I should get it. So, in answer to a question that Cody asked, you said that the beep came at halfway through the word support or something like that.
Suppose, yeah.
Suppose, and what I would say is that over many years of sampling, what I have found is that most people, when they're reporting inner speaking, say that the beep comes right at the end of the sentence. And of course that's not true in the real world. The real world, the beep would be, sometimes at the beginning of the sentence, sometimes in the middle of the sentence. But in terms of experience, it's very often at the end. And so what I think that means is that it's not really the case that the beep is a characteristic of the external world. You have to process the beep and recognize that this is the beep, and that takes some cognitive processing or some mental processing or neuronal processing or whatever. I don't care how we define that, but it takes a while, and but you were already engaged in something else, and so you have to sort of finish off the first one and get to the second one and say, well, that's the beep. So there is a messiness of the beep. The beep is not just a instant in time.
Right, yeah.
The beep is an experiential piece of Phil's experiential world, and he's got to make that beep happen.
Yeah.
There are vibrations happen in the earphone or whatever, but to recognize it as a beep takes some time. And that so we do the best we can, but we recognize that there's a manufactured nature of the beep. And yes. So now in a more complicated situation, like maybe the one we've got going here, well, there's the beep. We have to figure out that that's the beep, and as opposed to some other noise out there. And then we have to figure out what's going on about the plant and whatever. So we're pretty understanding that there's some construction that happens. We're just trying to do the best we can in that context.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The beep itself is an experience, and then it forces you to recognize it, to and to realize that, oh, I'm supposed to describe for DES, I'm supposed to describe what I was experiencing right before this beep.
Right.
And that's maybe sort of what I was saying. It with the beep that happened while we were putting the duvets in the duvet cover. I was kind of surprised by the beep, and then I couldn't remember what was happening right before the beep because it was an experience that in and of itself. So yeah, I don't know.
So the beep launches the introspective task, I guess we could say, if we don't get too carried away with the word introspection. And the only advantage of the beep is that you can learn. Most people can learn to do that task pretty quickly, and whereas if you in regular armchair introspection, you say, well, I wonder what I was thinking about right now. And then, that's a sort of a long-term kind of a thing, and you got to be motivated to think about that right then. Where the beep comes at you from the outside and picks that moment for you rather than you have to do it yourself. But it does involve a reflection, and that reflection does change whatever was happening. And the question, and it's an important question, is whether that's a minimal change or a maximal change.
Yeah. It's difficult to answer that. But I feel like I'm getting better at this. So
what I would say is that, well, I guess I still have a question about. So I want to know about the bug in the insect in the plant here. So
right.
Does it seem at the moment that I am reaching towards an insect, or does it seem at the moment like I'm reaching towards a plant? And
it seemed like I was reaching towards a plant.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have not conjured up. I've not replaced the plant with an insect. I am reaching towards a plant that has a clear enough insecty looking presentation that I might say to.
Yeah.
I think I'm good. And I guess I also had a question about the stupid plant. Is that said innerly or out loud?
Innerly.
Well, can I ask a question about that too? Is that stupid plant, was that before the moment of the beep, or was that sort of, and I know we just had a conversation about the simultaneity of these things.
It was right before the beep. This stupid plant.
So at the moment of the beep, there's sort of two things going on, like this stupid plant and seeing the plant that looks like an insect.
Well, there were those two things, and there was also me reaching towards it and plucking a good number of those insecty looking leaves.
And so those sort of three things are directly in my experience, right? It's not just context that I'm reaching towards the plant, but that's somehow directly present.
Yeah. Okay. And now that I think of it, there's another aspect that I didn't write down, but I'm just going with my memory right now, and that was the sound of the leaves ripping off.
And that's
possibly
yeah. Right.
Go ahead, Dr. Ray.
And that was part of your direct experience at the moment?
Yes, I would say so. Yes.
And the distinction that I'm making there is that the physical world, as you said in Beep 2, I guess it was, when I was talking with Agustina, the physical world wasn't present to me. It was obviously there, and I was seeing, my eyes were aimed at it, and there was no doubt birds chirping or whatever. I could hear it, but I wasn't attending to that. But in this particular case, it seems like the leaf ripping was part of my direct experience.
Yes. Yep. Because it was very quiet. So the context was very quiet. So sounds stood out.
So that it was very quiet is what I would call an explanation. And
okay.
and it may very well be true. I'm not saying it's not true, but the question is not why the sounds stood out. The question is whether the sounds stood out, and the effort towards explanation screws up the effort towards careful description, it seems to me.
Okay.
So I would like to train us, I guess you could say, I would like to encourage us not to spend too much time worrying about why something happened. That's too hard a question.
Okay.
We good about B4?
Yeah, I am good.
So we've been at this for the hour that we contracted. Should we keep on going, or should we?
I'm okay to keep on going.
All right.
I don't know.
I have until the half hour, so till Pacific time 9:30. So I got about 28 more minutes. So I'm good until then.
All right, let's keep going. Number 5.
Okay. Okay. This one was difficult, but I'll get to that after. I was walking on a trail around a small lake close to my place. It's a particularly warm, sunny day. On the trail, I had just noticed a woman sitting on a bench ahead of me, and there were a couple of other women close to her walking or standing on the trail. At the moment prior to the beep, I was simply navigating the curve in the trail looking ahead. I saw the women, the as of yet leafless trees, and the ice on the lake behind them as I was striding by at a decent pace. But physical action was just as prominent as anything else. And then I also wrote, it was difficult because I didn't really feel that I was apprehending anything at the moment prior to the beep. It went off and I thought to myself something like, oh, geez, I have no idea. I felt like I was sort of running on default mode network brainwaves. I don't know if you know anything about default mode network, but I was very relaxed and I was in sort of a meditational state while going for a walk. And I wasn't focusing on anything in particular. I was just moving myself along at a good pace, making sure I didn't run into a tree or bump into a person while enjoying the walk. Yeah.
So I would say that last sentence that you said, I was moving along at a good pace, making sure I didn't bump in. That sounds to me like sort of a general description of this aspect of this portion of the walk. And the question is anything in your experience at the moment of the beep? And the answer to that could be, well, no. We've decided that it's possible to have nothing about the environment be in experience. That's possible. Or it's possible that I am noticing my physicality. I feel the walk. You said that was as prominent as anything else.
Yeah.
That's pretty ambiguous as to whether.
Yeah. I would, as best I can narrow it down, my experience consisted of what I was seeing, the people in front of me, the trail, the trees, and then the lake is still, this is the Arctic, right? So the lake is still mostly frozen. And then the physicality, as you said, like I was walking at a pretty good pace.
And when you've described it as the woman sitting on the bench, is it the womanness of that's there, or could it just have been easily to say a person sitting on a bench? In reality, she happened to be a woman, but I just see a person.
No, she was maybe, 15, 20 feet away. And it was clear that like, I think she was wearing pink and I guess there was some kind of womanness, which is why I said a woman rather than just saying a person sitting on the bench.
Okay. So there is some recognition of the womanness of this, and more. Is there more detail about that?
I don't think there's any more detail about that. There was that woman, and then there were the other two women. And the trail is only so wide. So I was sort of, yeah. See, I feel like I'm creating too many things. Like I was sort of paying attention to where I was walking because they were, one of them was coming my way and one of them was, I think, just standing there. Maybe two of them were coming my way. And then there was this bench and I had to go a bit towards the right because you don't want to move out of the, if somebody's coming towards you, you don't just move out of the way at the very last second. You kind of, decide, okay, I'm taking the right side and they're taking the left side or whatever. And it's sort of the polite thing to do. And then there was also the aspect of just looking at the scene, like the trees and the ice behind the trees. So it was these three women, the walking, the navigating, and then the visual aspects.
And would you say that these things are all in your direct experience, so that it's not like there was nothing in my experience? Instead, right. I'm seeing these things, I'm feeling my walking, I'm in the process of navigating the curve. All of that stuff is somehow in my direct apprehension.
Yeah, but see, I think of other experiences and I think of like something in particular, like innerly saying something or visualizing something. But for this one, I felt like none of these things was particularly dominant.
Present but not dominant.
Present but not dominant.
As opposed to absent, like in the beep, the number 2, I guess it was, where the visual aspect was not present. My eyes were seeing it, no doubt, but they were experientially not present. Here, all this stuff is experientially present, but I haven't made any of them the figure to the figure.
Right. Yeah, I think that's as best as I can put it. Yeah.
Okay. And I would say there's no law that says that a person has to have a figure out of every experience. I think that's
okay.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And so out of all of the possible candidates for the figure, there's the woman on the bench, the woman on the trail, the ice on the lake, the trees, the navigation.
Yep.
Those are all in my experience.
And
none of them dominant.
I was wondering if like the physicality was a part of it as well, like just the experience of walking, that was present as well.
More so than the trees or the woman or the lake?
No. Honestly, as best I can describe it, there was nothing that stood out.
Okay. And the experience of walking, I guess I should have asked some more questions about that. The experience of walking, that's a physical, is that right?
Yeah.
In some particular part of my body, my feet or my legs or my arms? Or
that's hard to say. It just
doesn't have to be.
Like, okay, so I've read some of your work and the different kinds of inner experiences that people have and the sort of categories, and I haven't read anything about physical, like let's say you're playing a sport or something and you have to do some kind of motion that requires a bit of skill and you're executing that motion. I don't know if that comprises, like if there's potential for that comprising another type of inner experience.
Well, it could be, but most of the time those actions I end up thinking of I'm engaged in a skilled activity, but the skill itself or the act of itself isn't present.
No.
Obviously, I'm skilled. I'm a skilled walker. I'm navigating. I know the rules.
I'm not like, I know walking doesn't take much skill, but I was sort of navigating the trail and moving myself in a way that I wasn't going to bump into any oncoming traffic or a tree or something.
Right. I use the word
There
skill.
was some awareness. There was some awareness of doing that.
I use the word skill pretty broadly, so I would say that this skill of walking on a trail involves some generally passing left shoulder to left shoulder or whatever, taking the right side of the trail, and that all that stuff is part of the trail walking skill. It's not, it might not be a high level skill, but I would call it a skill.
Sure.
But that is generally not done explicitly in awareness. It's like, well, I got to pass left. The rule number 4, I got to pass left shoulder to left shoulder, whatever. It just occurs as part of the application of the skill.
Or I would say similarly, sort of like skill in, Phil, you were talking in the second beat, right, where you were obviously skillfully communicating and talking about what to name the car, but that sort of was all done outside of your direct apprehension, right? Or that was happening, but that wasn't at all sort of part of your experience at the moment.
Sure. Yeah.
And so the walking in this beat but that's not like the second beat, right? The walking somehow is present. We haven't yet clarified, maybe we won't get to that today, but somehow the walking it wasn't that it was just something that I was doing, but that's sort of context, that somehow the walking is present to me.
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Do we have time for number 6? Energy for number 6?
Okay. Sorry if I'm taking a while here. Okay. I was preparing a bowl of instant ramen noodles, literally adding contents to the bowl while the noodles were boiling. I was trying to think of a way to use up some fresh cilantro and fresh mint so it wouldn't go bad. I had been thinking of making an Indian mint and cilantro sauce, the type that I've had at restaurants with papadums as an appetizer. I don't know if you're familiar with these foods, but basically I remembered what the sauce was called. And at the moment of the beep, I had just thrown some cut up mint leaves into a bowl. At the moment prior to the beep, I had just thrown some cut up mint leaves into the bowl and was innerly saying the word hariali, which is the name of the sauce as I remember it. Anyway, I'm not sure if that's actually correct. I apprehended the subtle sound of the leaves as they landed in the bowl and was moving my hand back towards the cutting board in front of me. I was conscious of what was in front of me visually, but not focused on it. And it was actually the second or third time I consecutively innerly said hariali, as if to better ingrain it into my memory for the future.
This is yours if you want it, Cody.
Oops, sorry, I forgot whose turn it was. It's like, okay, and so
shall I ask if you're...
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
So first, the at least a primary part of this is the saying of hariali.
Yes.
And this is maybe the second or third time that you said it.
Yeah.
Okay. And is that more prominent or less prominent than the sound of the leaves, or is the sound of the leaves equally, more or less?
I think what was most prominent was me innerly saying hariali. Although I noticed the sound of the leaves, but I wasn't. It wasn't a central part of the experience. It was present, but not central. And what was central was saying the word Hari, because I had just remembered it. So I was Hariali, and I was just like Hariali, and then doing something else, and I said Hariali again. And then this time I had just thrown the mint leaves in the bowl, and heard the sound, and was moving my hand back towards myself. And as I was doing this, I was innerly speaking the word Hariali.
And is the moving of my hand back towards myself a fact of the universe, or is that in my experience?
I guess it was a fact of the universe.
So experientially,
but part of my experience was the visual aspect of, because these things are in different places, and the cutting board was in front of me, and I was getting back to, I don't know, I think I was going to either tear some more mint leaves or cut some cilantro or something. So the visual aspect was part of the experience as well.
So there are three aspects of my experience, if I'm counting correctly: saying Hariali, hearing the sound of the leaves, and seeing the visual display.
Yeah.
And of those, the saying seems more prominent. Is that like 60-20-20 or 85-15? Or not trying to hold you to the numbers, but just trying to get a sense.
Yeah, I would say something like 60-20-20. Yeah.
So quite a bit more of my attention is on the speaking, the innerly speaking.
Yeah.
But the rest of the stuff is there, but not too prominent.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, whether it was, so I had said this a few times. I had said the word innerly a few times, but by this point, it's actually questionable as to whether I heard it, if I sort of heard myself saying it, or if I was, because I had already recalled it, right? That's something I had been trying to do while preparing the food, was remembering the name of this sauce. And I had already recalled it, but I was just sort of repeating it. But I sort of feel like as you innerly repeat things, it almost gets to the point where it's more like you're just hearing yourself saying it. It sort of comes to you.
And so
maybe that's just sort of how it was this time. I don't know if it's actually like that for anyone else, but
yeah, I would say let's set that aside. But does this seem like I'm hearing? I feel sort of confidently to say I'm hearing Hariali for whatever reason. This is more a hearing than a speaking.
I'm not sure now. I'm not sure.
So we've made a distinction between hearing and seeing, and in the real world, that is a really easy thing to describe. No one would confuse. I can't tell whether I'm talking into a tape recorder or hearing my voice come back. That's, that no one would find that problematic. But in the inner world, sometimes it takes some practice to try to figure out how to talk about that. And so I'm happy to leave that as being, well, we've raised the question rather than answered it about the nature of inner speaking and inner hearing. We'll either figure that out or we won't.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I don't know. Let me just go back to what I said. I was innerly saying the word Hariali. I don't know. Maybe I've clouded my memory of the experience by realizing the possibility of hearing myself saying the word or actually processing the word.
So what I would say about the method is that because we haven't had these conversations about the distinctions between hearing and speaking, then I think it's not possible for you to go back and reconstruct. I think you can say something that's plausible, but I wouldn't believe you because you didn't have those distinctions at your disposal at the time of the experience. next time when you sample, we will have had these conversations, and you'll be more interested in that, and maybe you'll be able to tell the difference, and maybe you won't. I'm not trying to force you into even
right. Just like last time, I remember there were a few experiences where I wasn't sure if I had innerly said something with words or it was just
right.
more like a thought, like, and this time I paid more attention to that distinction, and I wrote down if I had innerly said something with words or not.
And
in each case, it was with words. So.
And to double back to the conversation that we had at the beginning of today's conversation about the difficulty in determining simultaneity and sequentiality or whatever, to some degree, I think that's not possible because of the constructive nature of the beep. We do the best we can and try to be honest about it. So if we can't determine whether something was sequential or simultaneous, then we can't determine that, and that's as good as we're going to be able to get.
Yeah.
And that's good enough from my point of view.
I feel like I'm also getting, sorry to interrupt, but I feel like I'm getting a bit more comfortable with just saying I don't know if there's something that I'm not sure of, instead of trying to put it in one, like a yes or no kind of thing or something definite. I think I'm a bit more comfortable with just leaving something open if I'm honestly not sure, instead of trying to reconstruct it and then by trying to reconstruct it, recreating it into something that maybe it wasn't.
Right. And I think and that's great as far as I'm concerned. I don't know is a really good answer to a lot of questions. And I would say going forwards, maybe we're going to figure this out and maybe we're not, which is another layer of I don't know. I don't know whether we're going to figure out the I don't know portion.
Right.
And that goes all the way down as far as I'm concerned. I mean, either we're going to figure it out or we're not, and that's fine with me. And so there are some things about your experience about which didn't seem very ambiguous. Like I saw the letters and they were black and metallic and the font, and maybe I can't name the font, but it was a particular font or whatever. That seemed pretty central. So Phil apparently knows centrality of experience when he sees it. And then other kinds of experiences didn't seem to have that sort of figural predominance. And so that's good. That's the way it is as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's I would say in a way that's one of the things that distinguishes DES, or our intention is we're not trying to put something into categories. We're trying to get something described the way Phil experiences it. We're trying to help Phil. We're trying to help all of us, actually. It's not just Phil. We're trying to help all of us speak to the limits that we can with the fidelity that we can about Phil's experience.
Yeah.
And without forcing him into our language or we're trying to support his indecision, or because that's it. That's the way it is. Mm-hmm. So we need to do it. So shall we decide to do this again and see what?
Yeah.
Okay, Wednesday at the same time, unless something happens.
Yeah.
And as far as the beeper is concerned, use whatever tape or whatever to try to get that done, and to test it out by holding down the white button. And
Yep. We'll do. All
right. Sounds good.
Okay. I know we went into overtime, so thanks for your patience.
Yeah. And I would say you're doing great. The indecision or the I don't knowness is a fundamentally important thing, and
yeah,
and I'm happy to hear that we're worried about it, because that really being worried about it is the best that we can do.
Yes. Yes.
And then we'll get as far as we can, and as much understanding as we can without making anything up. That's the object.
Yeah, and let me know if you have more thoughts on this multiplicity aspect. So in a number of these experiences, there were multiple things that were simultaneous or slightly not, like slightly sequential. And if you happen to have any more thought, I'm not asking you to tell me right now, but if you happen to have any more thoughts on that, I'm quite interested. But I also don't want it to bias my future recordings of my experiences. So
what I would say about that is let's keep the interest in multiple or simultaneous or whatever things alive, but let's not try to talk about it now, because if we did, we would be tempted to speculate on the basis of a couple of samples. And better we should gather some more data, which is either going to change what we think about this, or it's not. And if it does, then it would have been really smart for us to wait. And if it doesn't, then it didn't matter.
Okay. Sounds good.
So I'm not trying to blow that question off. What I'm trying to say is that I think we can do a better job of answering it if we can be a little patient. Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
And I would further say that I would wish to be reassuring about it in the sense that I was interested in some of your samples had a clear figure and everything else was in the ground, and some didn't.
Yeah.
And that's interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
And I would also say, Phil, that it's possible through all this that it's not like there's a rule that things have to be simultaneous or not, or it doesn't have to follow any one sort of logic to it too. So I think the better that we can all get engaged and in touch with grasping whatever was going on just before that beep sounded, that the better, whatever that might look like or where that might lead us to. But I wanted to echo too, I know this is a difficult process too. So, I mean, you're
challenging.
It's all good.
Yeah. It is challenging. It's also interesting.
Very, yes.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Okay. Have a great day.
See you on Wednesday morning.
Thank you, Phil. Nice to meet you. Hopefully I can be there maybe the next sampling day.
Okay.
See you later.
All right. Take care.